right. Hello, everybody. Is this video working? I feel like I'm always unsure. I jump on here. How many people we got? All right, we got some people jumping on. Awesome. Cool. Give everyone like a hot minute to join our live video. Sweet. So let me make sure that this link is working for everyone, that it's properly redirecting. Yep. Seems to be working. Cool. Thanks for being here, everyone. Got a couple of people joined on. Sweet. Awesome. Who's here on the chat? Jump on in. Who's on the chat? Who's here? Say hi. Hello. Who's here on the chat? Say hi. Awesome. Hey. Cool. Hey, Caitlin. Thanks for saying hi. Cool. This is way more fun when we have people joining. I don't feel like I'm talking alone to my computer screen. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started because there is a lot to go over. First thing I wanted to say about this video, which is all about pricing, how do you price elopements properly, which is a really common question. I feel like I hear around a lot. I think there's a lot of misinformation, a lot of myths going around about how elopements should be priced. And so I'm excited to talk about all of them. And sorry if I look really tired. I got off an overnight flight from Kauai and I am like as tired as I look right now, but this is gonna be really fun. I'm stoked to jump on and do this. So please ask questions throughout and I'll like keep checking back and see what people are asking. But I'm gonna go ahead and just get rolling, get started. Sweet, cool. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about with pricing about elopements is just a couple of myths that I want to debunk first, just in general about elopement pricing. And these are some things that I am very, very passionate about because I think there's a lot of misinformation floating around out there, and it's not, you know, no one's having bad intentions with this misinformation. I just think there's a lot of misunderstandings around elopements in general. I've noticed that over being a full-time elopement photographer for the past 4 or 5 years, like only shooting elopements, I run into a lot of confusion around it, a lot of confusion in like what they should be, what they should look like how they compare to big weddings in many different ways. And so if anyone's watched these live before, like if you haven't figured it out by now, I am a huge nerd and I absolutely love data. And so when like something is like bothering you and I have this like an issue that I can't quite figure out, I'm always trying to figure out, is there any data around this? Is there anything that I can figure out that will help me like explain and understand the situation? So what prompted this live topic was someone in the group last week said, you know, I've heard that couples who are eloping are really budget conscious and therefore like you can't price elopements the same way that you can price big weddings, like couples just won't pay for it. And I just jumped on that, and it was like through talking to this person about that made me decide this would be such a good topic for a whole live video. Is just kind of the myths around pricing elopements, how to properly price them, how to charge for travel, like the main big topics I run into with elopement pricing that's really different than big wedding pricing, or shouldn't be different than big wedding pricing. So I'll get into that. I also just want to give a small disclaimer. This topic of pricing in general is huge, and there's no way I'm going to be able to go over all of pricing and pricing psychology and all the things that have gone into my pricing and cost of doing business and all these kind of things. Like to really properly do the entire topic of pricing justice. So for today, I'm really gonna stay centric to like the elopement service pricing. We're gonna like ignore products and albums just for now and just talk about as a service, elopements kind of in compared to like big traditional weddings, like as in the photography service is the same, but what's different is instead of photographing a big traditional 100, 200 person wedding at a venue and what that looks like as your job of photographer and what you're charging for that, how that should compare to doing an elopement. That's like the part I'm the most interested in, because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings around it. But so I'm going to try to keep the scope more narrow today, even though pricing is a massive topic, which I could talk on and I have talked on at workshops in the past for a lot longer than this. So, but let's go ahead and jump in. So back to kind of the myth of like couples who are eloping, like you can't charge as much for elopements as big weddings, because couples who are eloping are really budget conscious, like they're eloping because they don't want to spend the money on a big wedding. That's a really common misconception about elopements in general, but it has seeped into what photographers believe about elopements, in the sense that they don't charge as much for them because they don't think that they can. And so I would very happily like to dispel that myth and show you guys something. Let me pull this up. If any of you follow our blog, we've been putting out some really interesting elopement content out there recently. So let me screen share this with you guys and show you what's going on. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, cool. So this is our blog, and a really interesting post that we just put out was this top 10 reasons to elope post. And instead of this being just kind of anecdotal ideas that we've had on what are the best reasons to elope, this is actually based on a survey that I did over the last year and a half, and have asked over 200 couples, not just our couples, but any couple who had eloped, what their top reason for eloping was, because I found that really interesting, because I wanted to know, there's all of these misconceptions around why people elope. They didn't, it's last minute, it's kind of ill planned. They didn't want to go through the hassle of planning a big wedding. Maybe, they didn't have a ton of family and friends, or more like the loner type, like eloping is better for them. Maybe they didn't have the budget for it. P.S. All of these things are false about elopements. They are absolutely not in alignment with my experience of having photographed several hundreds of these, and two, they're not consistent with this data that we received from talking to over 200 couples who had eloped. So these are not just my couples. Some of my couples did answer this survey, but this is, there was really no research to go off of in this area in the industry. And so I figured, why not try to collect some and try to get some insights into this. So I think this is super interesting. This is all based off of data. We had this survey data professionally coded and translated into more quantitative data, because survey data is qualitative, and so it needs to be like analyzed and coded, and like different themes pulled out in their software that does this. So we had this done by a professional. So the very number one top 10 reason was mentioned as a reason in like 75% of the themes that came out of the responses, mentioned something to the effect of their number one reason for eloping was because they wanted their day to be quote unquote like a just us experience. Things like, we wanted the focus of the day to be on us. We wanted a day that was just about us. We wanted, to not be distracted by everything else, but, for it really be to be about us. And so, about us, related to us, focused on us, all these kind of things, that theme came up over and over and over and over again, in the sense of, and we've pulled some like actual quotes from different responses here. Like, that is the number one reason that couples elope, is they see, and it's true that a big wedding isn't just about the couple. It's about everything else, and it can also be about the couple. But in my experience, and probably a lot of photographers' experiences with big weddings, is a couple can also get really lost in the shuffle, and in the production, and in the performance of all of it, and in all of the like different varying needs and desires of guests and opinions and everything, and the stress and the drama, and just the nature. It's the nature of the beast, really. It's not the fault of a big wedding, but couples who are choosing to elope may have seen these before. Many of them have been to plenty of their friends' big weddings or family members' big weddings, and decided, and have seen through it for themselves and decided, this is not a day that is going to be about us. Like, I didn't see the couple enjoying themselves. I maybe got 1 minute with them the whole time, and this doesn't seem like very much fun. And like, that's the main reason they're choosing to elope. It is definitely not budget, is not the number one reason. So like, statistically, the reasons that couples elope are, you know, they want it to be just about them. They feel an elopement is a more authentic way of getting married. It's a more true to them type of celebration. You know, a big party isn't them, and so they wanted something more authentic. Number three, you know, they wanted something more intimate and intentional. They wanted, if they invited people to it, they wanted to be able to actually spend time with them, not just 60 seconds in a receiving line. You know, like wanted to have intentional experiences with the people that they care about on their day. So the first time, you know, and the next piece, less family drama, we're still in like the top 4 reasons here that couples elope. The first time that we get to anything related to money is number 5. But what we realized through looking at this data with couples is it number 5, talking about money, like relating to the money issue. It wasn't that couples were saying they didn't have the money and they weren't willing to spend it. It was that they weren't willing to spend it on what you spend money on in regards to a big wedding. They weren't willing to spend it on mint tins and table garlands and, you know, a whole bunch of essentially stuff that didn't matter. Is, you know, so this survey answer said, you know, a big wedding is very materialistic for a day that should be about true, pure love, in the sense, like, it's not that they don't have money and they don't value in investing in things. They just didn't value investing in all the stuff that comes with a big wedding. I found from experience that couples who elope are psychologically, they value experiences over things, like hugely. That they will spend money on, you know, on travel and on road trips and on, you know, expensive adventure sports like, you know, skydiving, scuba diving, you know, really big ski trips, like whatever it is. Like, they're willing to invest money, but it's the fluff and the stuff of a big wedding. This doesn't seem worth it to them. So in a sense, like, when it comes to pricing elopements, the thing that I'm trying to get to here is that it is not, couples do not elope. I repeat, not. It is not the main reason that they elope because they want to save money. It is a side effect of eloping because, no, they aren't spending the thousands of dollars on all of the different things that add up into a large wedding budget. I mean, the average spend on a wedding in the US, and this is average, which is shocking to me every time I say this number. The average spend in the last NOT survey is like $34,000, like average. That's not high. That's like right in the middle of the road. There are a huge amount of people that spend a lot more than that, and like there are people who spend less than that. But on average, a typical American, that's what you're looking at to spend when you look at a big wedding. And so a couple eloping, it's not that they look at that number and say, oh my God, that's unbelievable, that's ridiculous, just because of the numbers' sake, but it's because of what it's being spent on, in the sense of, sure, they would go spend that on a honeymoon or, you know, on a couple, several really amazing trips together. Like, that number isn't necessarily the issue. I'm not saying that there's not couples who elope specifically because they absolutely cannot spend that price tag on a big wedding, but it is not the main driving factor. It's not in the top 4 reasons, period. And even the 5th reason, the money reason isn't what I think most people think it is, which is couples who eloping don't have the budget, they don't value photography, they won't spend good money on, you know, having an amazing experience. That just is not true. So anyway, anyone can read like the rest of the blog post that's sitting here on our blog. So I'll just stop sharing this for a second and we'll go back to like other myths that I want to talk about here with pricing psychology. So it is a myth that couples who elope don't have the budget for photography. So this actually, to be honest, it was a fear that I first had before I had photographed a lot of elopements. My background, my history is I actually photographed weddings for 6 years before I ever photographed an elopement. I started photographing weddings in 2009, so about 10 years ago. And the big weddings were all that I did. So, you know, there's a lot of information about how to price big weddings. And when I got hired for my first elopement, and I fell in love with it instantly. I decided this is it. This is all that I ever want to be a part of as a photographer. It just spoke to me in such a deep way, being an introvert who loves nature, who isn't close to my family, who, you know, couldn't have a really kind of big traditional set family-oriented wedding. That's just not a day that I would be able to have given my family situation. And that's a long story that I don't need to go into this second, but I didn't realize that, you know, I loved photographing weddings, and I loved the romance and like the experience, and it wasn't that they were too stressful for me, but the difference that I saw when a couple was just standing there, just the two of them, surrounded by the most incredible scenery that they could ever imagine, and just able to say their vows and commit their lives to each other in a way that they still felt insanely celebrated, and it felt so real, and even more real and even more intentional and intimate than my experiences of ceremonies at a big wedding. That something clicked with me of just, this is it. It was the first wedding that I had ever photographed that I could actually imagine myself having someday. I didn't realize that every single time I was photographing a father-daughter dance or a dad walking the brides on the aisle, that I was like dying a little bit inside, and because that just wouldn't be possible for me to feel like safe and myself and like supported like that on the day that I got married, with my family being there. And so it was, you know, family drama isn't the number one reason, but it is in the top 4 reasons that couples elope. And, you know, a lot of people have complicated families, and I relate to that. I connect to that. And, you know, and eloping isn't about excluding people. It is about making the intentional choice to like save that space for what you believe is more important at that moment, which is that the two of you are able to like come as you are, and really truly be yourselves and say the words that you really want to say without the fear of who is listening, like at the moment that you commit your lives to each other, which I think matters a huge amount. Like that's one of my biggest driving passions of why I care about elopements so much. I'm getting slightly off track here. We're talking about pricing, sorry, but not really, sort of, but not really. And so essentially, I think an underlying myth about elopements that affects the way people see them and how they should price for them is just, in many ways, elopements from just society's perspective, and I think also from photographers' perspective, are considered like less than a big wedding, and in a lot of different ways, in the sense of, oh, couples who are eloping don't have the budget, I'm not going to be able to charge the same amount for them, so they charge less. And essentially, price is an indicator of value. And so like everyone knows that you get what you pay for. Like everyone on the planet like understands that basic pricing psychology principle, in the sense of, if you're looking at something that's $8 and you're looking at something that's $4, no matter what it says on the bottle, your brain is automatically going to think, well, this is more valuable than that. Like, no matter what it says, they could be 2 identical products, but your brain will signal to you, this is more valuable than that. It has nothing to do with like what they're physically actually getting. Pricing is like an indicator of value when it comes to psychology, in a sense of the question of like, should elopements be priced less than big weddings? My answer is a resounding no, they should not be, because it is indicating to, you know, from the photographer's perspective, whether they feel this way or not, you're communicating to couples who elope that their day is less valuable than a couple who is having a big wedding, that the documentation of their day and the storytelling of their day and like the value that they're going to get out of you is less than if they were having a big wedding. And I'll get to like hours in a second, but just bottom line, like I'm really big into dispelling any idea that points to the fact that elopements are less important, that they matter less than big weddings. And it's been a concept in the photographer industry and just society in general for like a very long time. And in the sense of, you know, I had applied to do the Rangefinder 30 Rising Stars competition for like 3 years in a row, and I was told, not directly by any judges, but also by some other people who I was kind of talking to who were in that kind of WPPI area, that elopements were very much just like frilly photo shoots on mountaintops, in the sense that even like documenting elopements wasn't seen as like the same caliber of a big wedding day. And it was, you know, exciting to actually see. Like, I've seen a little shift, even in the last year and a half, of people's opinions and perspective on elopement photographers, that we're not just people who, you know, have the easiest job in the world, that like go take photos of people on a mountaintop. Oh, so difficult. Like, your life must be so rough. Like, I definitely get that vibe from like photographers who shoot more traditional weddings, and I understand that. I understand it because I used to only shoot big traditional weddings. I see where that perspective would come from, in the sense of, oh, you know, that 45 minutes that I have to rush and get all the couples portraits, you get 8 hours to do that. Like, wow, sounds like a hard job. So, you know, I'm gonna keep getting into this, but I just wanted to kind of start with just like, there's a lot of stuff out there that affects how people feel about how valuable elopements are, and value is a huge coinciding factor to how you price things. And so as a photographer, if you don't believe that a wedding, that an elopement is just as worthwhile to photograph and deserves just as much intention and time and effort and care as photographing a big wedding, you're gonna have a very difficult time convincing that to a couple, and you're probably gonna be pricing them less than your big weddings. And that's a missed opportunity there. It's a missed opportunity for you and for the value that you create for that couple. And it's also a missed opportunity for that couple, for their photographer to not fully understand and fully get why they're having the day that they're having. And it's not because they're not willing to invest money, but it's because they value something else more, and they're intentionally choosing to have a small wedding day. Like, I think it's assumed a lot of times that elopements are always like last minute. They're not thought through very well. And you know, our couples, we're booking all the way through fall of 2020 right now. You know, people are planning 18 months in advance, just like they would for a big wedding. And we have a wide spectrum, a wide range. Like, some people do hire us like a month or two out, but like really the main big push of inquiries comes for us like, you know, 7 to 10 months out from their elopement, which is, you know, not that dissimilar to when I was photographing big weddings. And so, you know, a lot of people are planning a year out. Most of the inquiries we're getting right now is for 2020. 2019 is mostly done, mostly full at this point. And so, anyway, the point is eloping couples, they're not necessarily budget conscious. It's not that they don't want to pay for photography. I think the main issue of why like elopements aren't seen as something you can charge as much for a big wedding for is because photographers aren't offering that. They aren't offering it. And I know when I first decided, okay, I want to see if I can build a business just about elopements, that was a big fear of mine. I was worried because the photographers I was seeing around me were only charging for like an hour or two of photos. That was what was thought should be the standard for elopements, that, you know, couple, you know, it's an elopement. Like, well, how long could it actually take? Like, it's a ceremony and it's some portraits. And like, that's what a lot of people believe about an elopement. And yeah, you'd be hard pressed to charge like 7-8 grand for 2 hours of coverage. And so for me, you know, I just kind of had this question in my mind of like, why should it be less? Why is that the standard? Why is it the standard that couples who elope are only offered an hour or 2 hour coverage? And is the fact that that's all is it the fact that that's all that they're being offered reflective of the fact that that's all they ever purchased? Has anyone ever tried to give a couple a full day of coverage and communicate to them how valuable that would be, that their story of the day that they get married is just as deserving of documentation as the story of someone who has 100 people at their wedding? And in my opinion, more deserving of documentation and storytelling and beautiful coverage, because they don't have 100 people there with cell phones. Like, I believe elopement photography is more valuable than wedding photography. You know, because literally, like me taking photos of a couple, of them saying that, of them getting ready, of her putting on her dress, of them saying their vows, of them, you know, doing this little trip, doing this hike, coming back, having their first drink, going out to dinner. Call me. Oops, sorry, I should put my phone and computer in do not disturb. Sorry guys, forgot to do that. Let me turn this off. Sorry y'all. I usually do that before I jump on these videos, but I forgot today. Whoever called me, sorry. Okay, so where was I? I was talking about, where was I, Kate? What was I talking about? I was talking about, I believe the fact that a lot of photographers believe that couples will only hire you for 1 or 2 hours, because that is still the majority of what most photographers are offering for elopements, which is the thing that I want to change. There's like one thing that I would love people to come away from this video understanding, is how to communicate the value of more than just 2 hours of coverage. And yes, sure, there's still going to be some people out there that want that you communicate the value and they're still like, nope, don't see it. But I would say, just to give people some numbers to just kind of mull over, at the moment we're sitting at, I think like 75, 80 bookings for elopements for 2019. And we'll likely end up over 100 by the time the year is finished. We're booking right now at an average rate of over $6,000 per elopement. I think it's like $6,300 per elopement. It is that is the average of what our couples are paying, and not just a few. That's like 75 to 100 couples like this year. Last year, Amber and I did 90 elopements, and we averaged at, I think, $5,800 a piece for those elopements last year, which means on average, most couples were choosing to have us be there for their whole day for an 8-hour story. And the thing to understand is, like, most couples did not come to us with that being on their mind. Most couples did not come to us thinking that that's what they wanted. A huge amount of them still came with like an hour or two. Like, we had that question on our contact form of like, how much coverage do you think you're interested in? Almost all of them said, a few hours, maybe 3, 4 max. And it was through communicating with them, like, your day matters. Like, the day that you get married is going to be your anniversary for the rest of your life. Like, us being there to document you two having this experience, like, it is a whole day. Like, the day you get married is your wedding day, like, just like anyone else's wedding day. Like, they have 100 guests there, they have family there, people are going to be snapping photos. It's the industry standard for big weddings to have all day coverage. And I was curious when I first jumped into elopements why that wasn't the standard for elopements. And I was curious, like, is it just that no one's being offered it? And I found that was really the case, that overwhelmingly, I had couple after couple tell me, wow, you're the first photographer that I feel like gets that this is more than just a photo shoot, that gets that this is our wedding day, that deserves documentation, and like, we want this experience to be amazing. And you're the first photographer that we've talked to that understands that like gets that maybe even more than we do, that like sees what we're doing as valuable and as meaningful, and like as a choice that we made intentionally, not because we're trying to like skimp out or cheap out. And like, I love the fact that you showed, like, we're excited about being with us for 8 hours, for 10 hours, 4 to 12 hours. Like, I wouldn't have thought to ask that before, but that is the beauty of marketing and of pricing, is that it is all about creating and communicating value, and pricing and what you offer is a huge piece of what you're telling people. This is valuable or this is not valuable, is like what you're offering in your packages and how you are pricing things. And so with elopements specifically, I'm going to get into some more details in a sec, but I wanted to overwhelmingly like communicate, like, elopements should be more than a 2-hour photo shoot. Elopement should be more than just a ceremony and some portraits. If that's what you believe an elopement is, it's going to be really difficult to communicate to a couple that it's something more than that. And so I wanted to do an entirely like separate video like this just on like what does a full day elopement look like, because I realized that's a huge topic, and I'd love to go through a huge amount of my full day galleries and like show people that, to like really understand that and really get that. So I'm just gonna go over like myths today, and the question of like, how do you upsell couples? How do you, and it's not upsell more in the sense of like, how do you just communicate to them on that base level that like their day matters? And I think a lot of that just has to come from your own personal opinion and perspective and your own passions. It has to be real. Like, do you think elopements matter? Or do you think that they are just a frilly, easy photo shoot on a mountaintop? I can for sure tell you that I work way harder for my couples who are eloping than I ever did as a big traditional wedding vendor. As a big traditional wedding vendor, you know, I felt more like the help. You know, a lot of times it was handed a timeline by a planner, or if I helped make a timeline for the couple, it wasn't really me making it. It was me trying to manage it and make sure that I could do all the things that I needed to do. It wasn't me creating it from start to finish and help crafting an experience for the couple. It was more like mostly dictated when it showed up for me. And so, you know, I was like a cog in a big machine, and I showed up to come here, document it, it's good, and then you're done. And it was beautiful. And there was a lot of big weddings that I loved being a part of, for sure. But with elopements, it was, you know, I've had couples, you know, tell me, like, we only eloped because we saw your work. Like, you are the reason that we're having a day like this. And like, we're coming into it with no ideas. Like, we trust you completely. We need your help to pick a location. Tell us what time of day we should get there, to help us with the logistics of like getting us up this mountain with our wedding clothes and our bouquet and our backpacks. How does that all work? How do I get up there without being sweaty? Like, how do you get these photos of, you know, beautiful, like dripping, sweaty brides on top of mountains? How does it happen? How do you do it? And it's like, I am, you know, our new tagline is elopement photographers and guides, because what I'm offering is way more than just being a photographer. And this process, this idea of guiding and this idea of like suggesting locations, it started just as a creative opportunity, in the sense of the first elopement that I was hired for was a couple from Texas. They called me 2 weeks before and said, hey, we want to come to Colorado, we want to elope. There's a lot of couples from Texas who want to elope in Colorado. And they said, we haven't been there before, we want you to help us pick a spot. And so I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. This is someone's wedding day, and they're asking my opinion as the photographer of like where they should stand and what their ceremony should be like. How different is that than the typical, like, you show up at a venue and however it is set up, you gotta roll with it. You deal, like, no matter what. So I got really good at dealing with like unideal lighting situations and all of that. But to be able to then say, oh my gosh, they're asking me to design their elopement day around the most perfect lighting and the best location. This is unbelievable. Like, what an opportunity. Why would I pass this up? Why would I not suggest the best location, the best timing, the best lighting ever? That's just making my job more fun, better, more beautiful, more enjoyable in editing, and like, they're going to result in better images. I'm going to have images that I'm more proud of by like giving the value out of like suggesting locations and suggesting timeline. And that's where it started, was that first elopement. And then it just was like a no-brainer to me. Why wouldn't I want to make their experience better? Why wouldn't I want to get the best images ever? Sure, I could just let them figure it out themselves, but then, you know, maybe I would be running into situations more like I did with pig weddings, with like a bright ass noon ceremony and you know, like face, you know, south, so like they're half in shade and half in sun. One person is in the sun, one person in the shade, like super non-ideal. So, you know, it was like, you know, really getting to a point of realizing, like, I'm the expert here. I'm the one who's done all this photography. I'm the one who understands lighting and understands timing. And as a hiker and as an avid outdoors person, you know, growing up here in Colorado, and that being a huge part of like what makes me happy and what I do all the time, like, it was just a marrying of all of my best interests and talents and passions. And it was, it just kind of morphed into, and for a long time, I was not good at communicating the value of like the extra pieces that I was bringing besides just being a photographer who showed up to shoot. And over time, it was like, yeah, wow, I'm actually nearly an elopement planner. Not quite, you know, I'm not booking people's like lodging for them. I'm not booking vendors for them. I'm doing a lot of guiding and ideating and suggesting and helping. And, you know, and it's all where I draw the line kind of between what is my job and what isn't, is if it's like related to their images and is going to give them a better experience and give them better photos at the end of the day, which is why like location and timing are like absolute no-brainers for me as far as helping couples. And that is a huge, huge, huge value add, is being an expert and be able to communicate that to couples and be able to say like, I am so excited to like come alongside you and help guide you through this. And I want you to have the most unbelievable what wedding day experience. And I want to find the like the most perfect off the beaten path location for you two to say your vows. And you know, you two have told me that you love hiking and that's like a huge part of who you are, and you love the idea of going a hike on your wedding day. So I'm going to help you with like the logistics of like how to make this happen, and like if you need to hike up early before sunrise and like what that experience might be like, or what it might be like to do a sunset hike and hike down in the dark. You know, that's all part of value. And when you're pricing elopements, I think the perception that elopements are less work than big wedding certainly has not been true for me. They have been more work, but it's like the work that I want to be doing, and it's all in the service of a couple and them having the best day ever, which is all that I care about at the end of the day. And so for me, it's been something that I've chosen to do because I've chosen to add that value and chosen to use my skills to improve their experience because that's what I care about. And so certainly the idea from a photographer's perspective, oh, they take me less time, they take me less work, therefore they should be priced less. One, pricing from a psychological perspective doesn't matter at all the work that you are putting into it. Like if you could spend 100 hours, you spend 100 hours on something and feel like you need to charge a certain price for it to be worth your time. But if the market isn't there, if the perceived customer value isn't there, you cannot charge that much for it. No one will buy it. And in the same sense, if something takes you 2 minutes and you feel like it's not a big deal at all, and like you should charge like 10 cents for it, if like if the customer perception and the customer like value is super high for this thing, you can charge this much for it and people will pay it. That's, simple supply and demand, like market rules, in the sense of, I think a lot of photographers have this kind of, it's called marketing myopia. And it isn't anything offensive. Like I work with photographers and with business owners all the time that just have these kind of like very narrow view of how they should market themselves, because they're really only looking at themselves as a photographer and their business, and really not doing the best job of like considering their audience and considering who their client is and their target market, and imagining trying to put themselves and trying to put themselves in their client's shoes, into like what that person might value, what problems they could solve for that person, how they could drive and make more value for that person. And so in a sense of like basing your costs and your pricing just on how much work it takes you is a very narrow, like myopic view of like what value means and what price means, in the sense of, yes, you need to be pricing things to make stuff worth your time. And obviously if you're doing something that takes 100 hours of work that you can't charge enough for, like maybe stop doing this thing and look for more of these things, for sure. I'm going slightly off my notes. Let me check this again really quick. Yeah, so someone asked the question like, okay, I'm a big wedding photographer and I'm having a hard time like understanding how to price elopements versus how to price the big weddings that I'm already shooting. And a couple of things to think about here. From my perspective, like they should not be priced as less than big weddings, because again, we've talked about that communicates subtly / not so subtly that an elopement isn't as valuable or worthwhile or deserving of documentation, or the photos aren't as valuable as someone who's having a big wedding, when in the reality of the fact that absolutely isn't true, in the sense of, and also they're not taking less time. They're not, I believe if you're doing elopements properly and guiding couples in the way that you should, and taking every opportunity to make their experience the best that it can be with, and a lot of times that does come with like with location scouting, with really building out timelines, with essentially guiding and helping them almost be a planner for them. I'm sure, yeah, if you had no desire to do that, and if you wanted to only work with an elopement planner, or if you only wanted to photograph elopements of couples who had everything all figured out, more power to you. That's not how our business works. Most of the couples that we work with come to us with no ideas, and they're this beautiful blank canvas that we really enjoy guiding them and helping them. And it's such a creative opportunity that I just personally wouldn't want to give up. Yes, it's a lot of work. Yes, I've spent hours and hours and hours this week looking at stuff in Norway and the Dolomites, and where else was I? In Greece, for elopements coming up this year, and it's taken a huge amount of time. It is way more effort than it would be for me to show up and shoot a wedding that was already planned at a venue. And I'm personally completely okay with that, and I charge appropriately. And so when I was the first year that I transitioned from only shooting big weddings to only shooting elopements, I had kind of an interesting bipolar year where I was shooting like 25, 30 elopements and like 25, 30 big. There was not that many. It was, yeah, probably still had like 15, 20 big weddings. It was a big year. I think I did like 45 total. And so really when it came to deciding like how I would price myself, like I started just from a point of equality, of like, I'm going to put 100% of my artistic effort into this couple's day, whether they're having a big wedding, whether they're having an elopement. And having shot both, like, I can say that was a good way to start to approach it. And being able to say, like, I'm gonna like say to a couple getting married and say to a couple who was eloping, like, I'm gonna come with all of the experience and knowledge that I have, and like, I'm gonna give you the best experience, like, no matter what your day looks like. And so I definitely think that elopements should, if I haven't said it enough already, do not price them less than big weddings. It is not doing you any favors, not doing your couple any favors. And so the other issue I think with having a price differentiator between elopements and intimate weddings and big weddings, and I've seen a lot of people do tiered pricing where it's like this much for up to 5 people, this much for up to 10, this much for up to 20. I think that you're potentially running into a very sticky situation there, in the sense that weddings and elopements and intimate weddings often do not end up with the exact same amount of people that a couple initially plans on there being there when they first hire you. It can be significantly more, it could be less. And in a sense of like, I looked at this problem with like, you know what, at the end of the day, I'm going to be giving 110. I'm going to be giving 110% of my effort to a couple, no matter what. And I'm not, because pricing isn't based on me and the amount of work I'm putting into something, it's about the client's perception. Like, they're getting their wedding day story told either way. And actually for a couple who is eloping, they're getting like the only documentation of their day, the only way that they're going to be able to communicate what their day was like to their family and friends, unless they take some selfies or have a GoPro strapped on. Like, this is the only way that they're going to be able to share this amazing story and be able to look back on it in 5, 10, 50 years, every year on their anniversary, and remember what this day was like. Like, elopement photos matter. They're not a photo shoot. Do not price them like photo shoots, because they aren't. They are a couple's wedding day. They're the day that they got married, the day that they're saying their vows. They matter just as much as someone having a big 200-person event. And so, yeah, I think I've covered most of these myths, which is good, that I wanted to go over. So the last piece of the last myth is that elopements should not be for as many hours as a big wedding. And like I said, that was not the standard at all. And I had not seen, really, as far as I looked when I started doing all day elopements and marketing them and communicating the value for them back in like 2015, I didn't really see anyone else doing them. And so it was an interesting like marketing challenge to take a couple who every other photographer pricing that they're looking at is saying 1 or 2 hours, and me saying, hey, I realize that it's like, that what I'm doing is different, and that I approach elopements different than most photographers. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you it's because of how much I believe your day matters, and how I believe that your day is not just essentially an upgraded photo shoot on a mountaintop. That like, your day is the day that you are saying your vows and committing your lives to your partner. It's going to be your anniversary day for the rest of your life. And like, you know, it's the industry standard for a couple to, you know, who's having a big wedding to get 8, 10, 12 hours of photos. Like, why don't you deserve that? Like, I believe that your day deserves that. I want to be there and I want to document it. And instead of looking at it as essentially a ceremony and some quick portraits, like, let's look at your whole day. Like, let's sit down, like, let's imagine if the two of you were creating like the best day for the two of you from start to finish, from the time that you got up to the time that you went to bed. What would the weather like? What would the weather be like outside? What scenery would you look out the window and see? What experiences, what adventures, what hikes, what places would you want to see? What would you want to eat and drink? Like, what activities when you want to do? Like, what does that day look like for the two of you? Like, start there as a starting point of planning an elopement with a couple, not like, where's your ceremony? Can we take a few portraits nearby? Like, that's such a bummer in my mind. Like, what a bummer that that's all that a lot of couples are getting offered for their elopement. That bums me out because I just eloped in Peru January 1st. And like the day that I got married was something that I believed mattered a whole lot more than that. And so, and like that value of how much I care about elopements, like translates into my pricing and translate how I communicate value to couples and translate to how valuable they think what I'm doing for them is. Pricing is all perception. It all is perception. I think, yes, you need to make sure that your costs are covered. And yes, you need to make sure that you're charging enough that based on the volume of wedding/elopements that you want to shoot, that you can cover your expenses and your bills. Yes, you should calculate your cost of doing business. Yes, you shouldn't undercharge, but I think that pricing is way more than that. Like, pricing definitely should not just be based on your costs or how much hours or how many hours you are putting into something. Those are starting points, like, to make sure that you're not charging too little. But like, there's so much opportunity beyond that of just like looking at, it's like, it's all customer perception based, and like how you communicate it is a huge part of how much you can charge. And so yeah, so essentially that's how I'm communicating to couples on the phone. And I have a whole like phone strategy, the phone calls, I feel like, where most of the magic happens of like explaining a couple what like an all-day elopement could look like for them. But that's like a whole separate topic, and God damn it, I really wanted to try to keep this one to an hour, and I don't think I can. What was I saying? Just missed it. Oh, yeah, that you know, like imagining their dream day start to finish, and at some point in there, they're going to be in a beautiful spot, and they're going to say their vows, and they're going to commit their lives to each other. It's going to be absolutely beautiful, and we will get beautiful portraits of them at the day. But their day is so much more than that. Like, that's, you know, level one, like, key piece of communicating to a couple. And you know, when I first switched from traditional weddings to elopements, yeah, it was a risk. And like, when I was about to graduate college, and I told this idea to my boyfriend that I wanted to only photograph elopements, that I thought that this, you know, based on data and trends that I was seeing, that this niche was going to explode from the marketing research reports I was like reading in college. He was like, are you sure you want to go all in with this? Are you sure that you want to narrow that much? I mean, really, is there really money in photographing elopements full time? And I said, you know what? Like, I don't know, but I have a plan, and I think that they're more valuable than people think they are, and I'm going to see how it goes. So luckily it's worked out so far. And I am so incredibly happy that elopements are so much more popular than they used to. But I think photographers, because we live in this kind of Instagram bubble, think that they're more popular than they actually are. Like, from a societal level, it is still like the craziest freaking idea that most people have heard. So if you have friends, hopefully you have friends outside of photographers. Hopefully you talk to a lot of people like who are outside the industry who still think like the job that I have and what I do, and that I photograph couples like climbing mountains with their wedding dress is like insane. And I love it. I love that it's still such a weird idea from like societal perspective, and like couples need reassurance still when they get on the phone with you. And I can't get into my whole full phone call spiel right now. I will like literally spend hours talking about this, but let's do just like a few more quick thoughts about pricing psychology. And I'm going to show you guys my pricing guide that like embodies like a lot of this. So hopefully that this helps make a lot more sense for you guys. So I want to talk really quick about a pricing myth around how you should price yourself that I see really prevalent in the industry for big weddings as well as elopements, is this kind of like do your time concept, in the sense of like you start at zero and then you can charge like a little bit more and like a little bit more, and like over time as you get experience you can marginally slowly have the confidence to raise your prices over and over, like slowly. So I've been doing this for 10 years, and I'm going to be completely honest and say like that was my approach to pricing when I first started, and that's what made sense to me. And you know, being a 16-year-old photographing weddings, like it felt insane to me to say, yeah, I charged $1,200 to photograph your wedding. That was, I don't know, like the second or third wedding that I had charged, that I had done. And that felt insane to me at 16. And like, I didn't have the confidence, but it doesn't mean that, because I didn't have the confidence, I will say, didn't mean that I didn't have the experience and that I didn't have the value to already have been charging a whole lot more, in a sense of like, I've talked about, pricing is all about perception. It's the customer's perception, but it's also how you as a service provider, as a photographer, like perceive your own value. And I see the mantra kind of like charge what you're worth, like over and over and over. And I don't like that phrase, first of all, because I think I'm worth a whole lot more than what I'm charging, like as a person, as a human being, and like you are worth way more than what you are charging people for your services. Like you as a human being, like you are worth so much more than that. So like I would hate for someone to take that idea and say like, I'm only worth this much, so this is how much I'm charging. Like I don't like that saying because of that, because if you kind of flip it around, it's really not a very, it's not, you know, people are valuable, you are valuable, whoever you are who is watching this, like you are worth so much more than what you feel like you can charge people for what you do. But I understand, like as a person who started out as a very, very young photographer, that it takes confidence and it pokes holes in any kind of insecurities that you might have when you stare at your pricing guide and say, am I worth this? Is people gonna pay me this? Like it's a really scary introspective process. And so I think the whole do your time mentality is not just from like more experienced photographers trying to keep younger photographers down, but I think it's also just a lack of self-confidence and self-esteem that it does take time to build up. But I will say something very interesting, is that if you're an already established wedding photographer and you are interested in photographing elopements, I certainly do not think and do not recommend in the slightest that you go back and start at the bottom. Like start from the place you were already at, like charge the exact same for elopements than you're already charging as big weddings. People will pay it. So for example, Tori, one of our newest partner photographer for Adventure Instead, is amazing, wonderful photographer. The second, so she's kind of jumping on board, and we have the same prices for all of us because we all provide the exact same service and have like literally nearly identical photographs. We photograph with all the same gear and like work with each other to create a seamless experience. And so like literally the second elopement she booked for Adventure Instead was a $14,000 elopement in New Zealand. And so it's all about confidence and experience and understanding the value of what you're providing, and that the value isn't how valuable you feel it is, it's how much value your couple and what it means to them. And so I think that perspective on pricing would hopefully help a lot of people feel like, yes, like what I'm doing is worth this. And again, it's not something that necessarily you are the best judge of, in the sense of like, you know, you should be like, I'm not explaining this very well. Maybe I am. Yeah, so essentially I don't believe in like the do your time model. I know photographers who, like, once you have the experience and like once you're at a point like that you can ethically ask someone to pay for you, like at all, as to photograph their wedding or their elopement. If like you're at a point where you're an experienced hiker, you're an experienced photographer, no matter how many elopements you've done, if you have the skills and ethically know that you are able to deliver for them, I don't see any reason why you need to start at zero and like slowly build your way up. Like I know photographers who like for their first wedding, charged $10,000 and like knocked it out of the park. Like, and I think that that might shock some people or like frustrate some people, especially like some more established industry photographers who did the do your time model, of being frustrated, like, hey, no, you can't charge 10 grand for your first wedding. And I think the exact opposite. I think like, heck yeah, like if you're gonna deliver and you're gonna exceed that couple's expectations, absolutely, like absolutely do that. And because like if what you're providing is worth that much to them, that's what you should charge. So a couple of other like pricing psychology things. Remember that psychologically, like everyone understands that you get what you pay for, and a higher price is a higher value. And so especially with elopements, like look around at the people who are doing this the best in the industry. You know, there's a lot of them. Like think I'm doing a pretty good job, but there's like a lot of other photographers as well. Like there's dozens that are, you know, really getting after it, really photographing amazing elopements in their respective regions, and some all over the world as well. Like look at what they're charging for elopements, in the sense of, if you're interested in like competing on that level and being that level of elopement photographer, if you're charging half of what those photographers are charging, you're only going to be getting couples who are choosing you just for that price standpoint, in the sense of, if you have a couple who has the ability to pay for either, they are not going to choose you because they're going to be questioning why your prices are so low. And they're going to be like, well, she must not be as good as that other photographer. He must not be as good as that other person because like she's priced half as much. Like that's weird. Like if you're purchasing something and you're looking at two items that you really need, that you value, that you are going to get, and you see like, especially something that you really care about, that matters a lot to you, like an emotional purchase, like a wedding, and you are looking at two different items and like maybe they look kind of similar, you're kind of trying to decide, and one is twice the price of the other, you know, and this is communicating like more value to you, and you might be like, this is a little fishy. This is like half of like the rate of like more like the other like elopement photographers that are top of the game in this industry. Like, you know, what's wrong here? Like, what should I be suspicious of? What is, you know, what am I not getting here that I would be getting here? And like pricing, like, is an indicator of value. And like, don't forget, like, yeah, there's pros of being priced lower than other people from a competitive side, but only for people who are specifically choosing you because of price, which is also not a fun place to be as a photographer, for people to say, I chose you because you were cheaper than XYZ person. That's like not a place that you like want to be. It's not fun to be in someone else's shadow. Like, and so I hope whoever is hearing this is hearing like, you know, you're worth so much more than what you are charging. And, you know, don't be afraid to charge the same as what other industry, you know, leaders are charging, or close to that, in the sense of, you know, worrying that no one will ever hire you. Because I actually think for the type of like high-end couples who care about elopement photography, and like, again, like budget is not the main reason that people are eloping. Oftentimes, like, I might be 90% of the budget that they are spending on their wedding day, and that is completely valid to them because I'm such an integral part of like what their whole day is going to look like. Because I suggested that location, like literally their wedding is completely different based on having hired me. And so they're willing to invest in that experience and that expertise. And if you don't have that experience, you don't have that expertise, go work on that, go get that. And I actually, like, personally am really respectful of people who do like portfolio building work for free and like do work to gain experience for free. But then like when they're ready, like they go for it. They go whole hog for the pricing and say, yes, this is it. Like, I've gotten to the point where I have the experience and I am able to do this, and they start withstanding a standard industry rate. And I have a lot of respect for people that do that. And if I was talking to myself 10 years ago, that is the advice that I would give myself for sure around pricing. So I'm going to open up my pricing guide really quick and talk about a few things here. I'm going to check the questions really quick. What do we have here? Melissa says, you're changing your site to say that weddings elopements start at the same price. That's awesome. Super stoked. See how that goes for you. What do you think helps people see the value and be willing to pay more? Kate, that's a great question. And I've already talked a little bit about kind of my own vulnerability around, like, I haven't always understood the value that I was providing. And that is something that every person and artist and photographer, you know, goes through that own journey for themselves. It is a scary thing and a hard thing to kind of be like, yes, I am worth like thousands and thousands of dollars. Like, before I've given, you know, our for a $14,000 elopement now, like, couples are giving us $7,000 with like literally never seen a photo that we've taken of them before. Like, that's nuts. That's unbelievable. Like, a 16-year-old me is like shriveling in fear thinking about that right now. And so a lot of it is, some of it comes from confidence and experience, and but if you can get what did you ask? Make sure that I answer this. What helps people see the value and willing to pay more? Essentially, you're asking like how I market myself in general, which marketing is a massive topic, and marketing is more than just advertising. Marketing, like pricing, is marketing. Every single post I put on Instagram is marketing. Every photo that I post, every caption that I write, that is all marketing. That is all me creating and communicating the value of what I do. It's every single piece of it. It's really, I don't think it's something that I can like pull a string on and say like, this is the thing that people are valuing and why they're paying me what they pay me. It is a overarching like brand and voice, and like, for me, if anyone hasn't gotten this from this video so far, how much I freaking actually care about elopements and how much I think that they matter, and that every couple deserves to get married in the way that they feel is perfect for them, whether that be a big wedding or an elopement. And I think there's a lot of support already out there for people wanting to have big weddings, and so that's why I'm so on like the pro elopement train. And so John says, I feel like a lot of us photographers think they're selling their photos, but they're really selling is the experience. That is a super good point, John. And actually, like, a great answer to Kate, to your question, in the sense of, you are selling so much more than just photos. Like, there, you know, the industries around experience providers right now are exploding and are getting so much more popular, in the sense of like, these days there's almost like a global shift to valuing experiences more and more over things, and in a sense of, the more you can communicate what you're offering as like being an experience curator, experience creator, experience provider, I know that that is a huge way in around like what we market, what we do. It's like, yes, the photos that we take are important, they matter, that they are good, but they are not the most important single reason why a couple is hiring us, which I seriously want to do an entirely separate live topic on, of like the myths around the fact that photos are what gets you hired, because they're certainly not what gets me hired. They are like a base level qualifier, but I don't think much more than that personally. And I know a lot of photographers disagree with me on that, and that's completely fine, but I think we are service providers and experience creators over the fact that we're artists, personally. I could seriously rant about that for a while, and I want to show you guys my pricing guide. So let me share my screen with you guys. And so I know I talked on my Don't Get Ghosted video around the fact that I send different pricing guides to I have multiple different pricing guides depending on where a couple wants to go in the world. So this is my pricing guide for destination elopements. And so this is what this looks like. It has an intro, it has some information about me. The reason why this is all on here, just as a point of note, is the fact that like, someone can very easily contact you having never actually thoroughly dug through your site, and like, maybe they saw you just on Instagram and shot you an email, or if you have a contact form linked to your Instagram, like the couples who contact us haven't necessarily spent all the time on our site. And now at the point where like they're connecting with me as their individual photographer for their day versus our team, it's more important than ever to make sure that I am personal and I communicate who I am and communicate that I am more than just a photographer. communicate why I'm passionate about elopements, communicate this huge question, like, why does full day coverage matter? This is on our main site also, if people want to read through it. You know, it is reiterating a lot of the stuff that is already on our site, but in a different way, in a more specific, tailored way, specifically to destination elopements. So here we go to our pricing. So there's a couple things that I want to talk about here. And let me pull up my notes so we can look at this together. Another screen up here. So a couple of things, biggest mistakes I see in photographer price guides. Number one is listing your lowest prices first. That is like, could not be more of a big mistake when it comes to pricing psychology, in the sense of, there's this thing called comparative pricing. Let me pull this up so that everyone can understand this. Yeah, so there's a thing called comparative pricing, where, in a sense, if you were to list your lowest price first, so let's say if I was to list my lowest price first of $8,000 and move up from there, like eight grand likely is more than what a couple was anticipating investing, even though I have that as a starting price for destination elopements on our site. It likely is like gonna take some time for their brain to wrap around that number. But if I list it first, it's like, whoa, shocker. Like, oh man, I don't know if I can stomach that. And then it's like, hey, what else do you got? Oh, 9,800. Oh, it's even worse. It's just getting worse, guys. Oh no. Oh, 11. No, this is definitely not for me. Oh gosh, yeah, I think I've gotten it way over my head here. Like, can't do it. Whereas, like, imagine your pricing being listed the other way, in the sense of like, $13,800. Oh my God, like I can't barely swallow it. What else do you got? Oh, 11. Oh, at least that is better than 13,800. Okay, what else? All right, 9,800. All right, we're under $10,000. That's a whole lot better. That's a lot closer to what I was thinking. And then 8. Okay, you know. So 2 amazing books that I seriously recommend anyone who really is interested in pricing psychology and in just like how you work with couples and how you communicate your value, and just some like just solidly good just life advice as well. 2 amazing books that I would highly recommend are How to Win Friends and Influence People. Super good book. And number 2, a book called Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion. That one's by Robert Cialdini. Both of those books, unbelievable, for really good nuggets of just genius you can pull out for your pricing guides, for how you're communicating about yourself on your site, for how you're talking to couples on the phone. Absolutely good information. And like, this concept is one of the concepts written out there, in the sense of like, show your lowest prices first, because, show your highest prices first. Do not get that wrong. Show your highest prices first, so that comparatively, each package that goes down like looks less and less expensive. Like, if I said to you my prices were like $6,000, $8,000, and $10,000, and I presented you them as 10, 8, and 6, that 8 would look significantly less expensive if I had presented you with a $10,000 price first versus presented you a $6,000 price first. Because again, pricing is all perceptions. This is one of the pieces of perception you can actually control by which order you list your prices in. Another really important thing to talk about with pricing is, everyone has heard of what's called charm pricing, which is, you know, the whole like, it's $299, it's like $11,999. Like, that's called charm pricing. And yes, it is a gimmick in the sense that, you know, because you are lowering that left digit by just 1, it is overall seeming way less expensive, even if it's like $1 off or a penny off or $100 off. And so it does work. It works for like lower cost products, and it works for products that people aren't as emotionally invested in purchasing. Like, yeah, it absolutely makes a conversion difference and a price difference when it comes to like clothes and goods and food and all those kinds of things. That pricing, like, you've seen it everywhere. That absolutely works for those kind of goods. Where it doesn't work, and I don't recommend it, is with wedding photography, is with a luxury service that couples are highly emotionally invested in. This is where prestige pricing, which is like round numbers, is way better for communicating that value, in the sense of like literally using a round number. Like if I had this priced at like $799.99, it's like literally cheapening like what I'm offering, because it's like that psychological, like, oh, you're trying to make it seem cheaper than it actually is. You're trying to make it seem less valuable than it actually is. And that charm pricing does not work with higher end like luxury products that people are emotionally invested in. Prestige pricing is better for like emotional purchases, because like a couple will feel like it feels right. It's like a nice round number, like using round specific numbers. The other advantage for it with pricing is it gives less room for people feeling like your prices are open for negotiation. Whereas if I put like 7,979 or 7,988 or something on here for this 8-hour experience pricing, to be like, like, did you just make up that number? Like, I feel like it might be negotiable just a little bit. Whereas like, I'm like, nope, it's $8,000. It's like a set, specific, clear number. It feels good. Another funny little interesting thing about pricing psychology is actually say out loud the number of syllables that your price is. So me saying $7,999, how long that sentence is, versus saying it's $8,000 or $8,000. And even actually communicating when you're on the phone, it's $8,000, it's $8K. The less syllables that you use when you communicate pricing, like your brain actually thinks that it's less money. Super weird, but it's actually true. Studies have shown that that's actually true. The other thing is use a small font size on your pricing, like smaller size, like smaller font size. Like you see how these numbers are huge. This text is huge. This price is actually small. Like that's on purpose. Using like smaller numbers, whereas being like $8,000, like in huge text, would like make it actually seem more expensive than like it's just $8,000. So those are some like interesting little like tidbits of information about like how you should be structuring your pricing when it comes down to it. So really quick, we have 8 hours for $8,000. My travel is covered. It's wrapped into all this, and I'll talk on travel in just a second. And so my travel is covered in all of these. The main difference between the different packages are the number of hours. And so the reason why I'm still writing all of this out in every single one is because I think it's important to communicate when you have this number sitting here, this 13.8, it shouldn't just say like 12, it shouldn't just say like 2 days of documentation. It should really thoroughly, fully explain all of the value. It's like that value stacking. You can value stack. That's another way to communicate value, which Kate hopefully also would answer your question. So I know a lot of people have structured pricing in the sense they say like, this is included in all of the packages, and then they'll say like 6 hours, $10,000, blah, 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 like real short with like the numbers and the pricing. The thing with that approach is like, people's eyes are just going to go immediately for that lowest price. Like here, like either clicking or scrolling to actually soak these in and see like, okay, what is coming along with each of these? It's not just the amount of documentation. That's like not the only thing that's like going into how these are priced. And so it's intentional the way that I have split this up to making someone pause and really think each of these through. The other reason to list your highest prices first is like every time someone like clicks down or scrolls down to like the next package, it's like in their brain they're already like having to give up what that package previously had versus adding. So like people are more likely to like want to avoid loss than actually want to gain things. Weirdly enough, that's how humans are wired. And so if you can almost communicate, the further you scroll down, the more you lose out of this package. It makes them like want to stay higher. Psychologically, having four collections is like about the right number, in the sense that people will really gravitate towards the middle. And you can also do it with 3, but I found having like an additional middle option, and people will kind of gravitate towards like one or the other. This, you know, being like, oh, slightly above average, being like slightly below average. But people don't generally want to identify as like always going for the lowest price thing when it comes to their wedding, because they care about it, especially if when you talk to a couple and like you get them to say how much they care about their day, in a sense of like it becomes almost like a psychological cognitive dissonance for them to pick like the lowest possible option at that point, because that would be going against them saying we actually care about our wedding day. So I could seriously talk about the psychology stuff forever. So let me go back to my notes. Okay, charging for travel. So how I have my travel coverage listed here is no matter what spot you end up picking in the world that's accessible by standard commercial airlines and two-wheel drive car, there's no extra fee. I'll take care of all of my own travel costs. So saying like my travel is covered, like I ship for free. I'm Amazon Prime, in the sense of like when you're shopping on Amazon, I mean, who thinks that like the fact that the shipping is free like makes you shop on Amazon more? Like I certainly shop on Amazon more because it's like free shipping, awesome, when in reality it isn't free shipping. They've added the price of the shipping, but they've just given it to me in one simple bundled price. So my brain doesn't feel like I'm paying for shipping, even though I actually am. My brain doesn't want to believe it. And so I have found, so there's some pros and cons to rolling in travel and like how I do that. I'm gonna go back to that. I'll go ahead and like stop sharing so we can like talk to you guys a little better. Cool. Cool. So, people have said some things. Let's see. Do I stay or camp in the same areas your clients you meet from the trailhead have found the package? I'm gonna go over that really quick here in my travel little spiel here. If I don't answer it, please let me know. And then John, yeah, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Super, super good book. Seriously awesome. Everyone should read it. It should be like a life requirement, honestly. It just so improves how you communicate with almost anyone in your life, and particularly couples. Like I love it. And so charging for travel, let's like back up a little bit and first talk about how you estimate travel costs. So for me, for an elopement in the US, my kind of base, like what I'm budgeting for when I'm thinking about what I'm charging for travel is flight, baggage, because again, not all airlines like include carry-on and include check bags. And if you're carrying on your gear, maybe you need a check bag, so don't forget baggage when you're looking at your flight costs. I have like my standard is like 2 nights lodging, which is the night before the elopement, like the night after. I don't generally like flying out or flying in the exact same day of an elopement. I have done it a few times in the past where my schedule dictated it. I'd say as far as doing like back-to-back stuff in out of states, I have done it plenty of times. I always make sure that at least there's like 3 other flights out on it, like even if it's on a different airline, to make sure that like if something got delayed that I was able to still make it. I've never had a problem with it in like the last 5 years of doing a huge amount of traveling state to state, but this is like generally flight, baggage, 2 nights of lodging, fly out the day before, have the whole day, fly out the next day. So when I'm booking stuff back to back out of state, like having that travel day in the middle is like awesome. If I can have more than one day, that's great, but that's where I'm at right now. Like that feels like comfy, that feels cozy. Like I can do an elopement in Yosemite on this day, and I can do an elopement in Arizona on this day if I have a day in between, just to make sure. Gas and rental car for elopements that I'm flying to. So those are all things that I am budgeting into. When it comes to international, I add an extra night or 2 of lodging depending on their collection. Like, do they have a day after session? Do they have a day before session? Are we doing a 2-day experience? Like that's going to add an additional night or 2 of lodging, and also like being able to be out there and be in the destination for at least a full day ahead of time to like double check any last minute like logistical things or location things, because as amazing as I am at like distance scouting, like there's nothing like actually being there and going and actually seeing a spot in person. And so I really like to have an extra day beforehand to do that for destination elopements. And again, like same thing, flight, baggage, rental car, any other kinds of transportation to and from a hotel from an airport if you have a shuttle, and that kind of a thing, as well as gas. So those are like things to kind of make sure that you consider when you're charging for travel. Other additional things that people forget about is if you have a dog, like, is there pet sitting costs? If you're parking your car when you drive to an airport, or is there airport parking costs? Those can really add up. And so like making sure that those are being budgeted for are super, super important. And additionally, like is like you eating out when you travel, is the food cost higher, like significantly higher than what you would be eating at home? Probably. So I personally have chosen, like, I eat fairly similarly. I bring snacks and cook for myself almost anywhere that I travel. So that is not a huge piece for me anymore, but that's something to definitely consider. And so, yeah, as far as like, do I stay with a couple or do I stay on my own? One of the beauties of like rolling in your pricing is that, rolling in your travel expenses to your pricing and just including it, like Amazon Prime, is the fact that you can be in complete control of how you travel. You are complete in control of your lifestyle design of like, do you want to fly business class? Do you want to fly economy? Do you want to rent a nice car? Do you want to rent a beater? Do you want to live in a van? Do you want to self-cater? Do you want a fancy hotel? Do you want an Airbnb? Do you want a hostel? Like, you have the full control, the full choice. I definitely do not personally recommend, and I don't get myself into situations where the couple's like, oh, we have an extra bedroom in Airbnb, why don't you just stay there? It'll be cheaper. And that's easier to say no to when I am like, my travel's already rolled in, like, it's not gonna benefit you guys monetarily, like, it's already rolled in. And I realized, like, you have to be operating at margins that aren't teeny tiny to be able to do these things. But I can say for sure, as someone who travels a hell of a lot, like, I'm between trips right now. I just got back from Kauai and I'm headed to Chile on Monday. Like, being able to like travel in the way that I want and I need in a way that is sustainable is really important, versus saying like, oh, there's an extra like bunk in like the bunk room, like at this venue or at this this camp. I know, I think I may have tried that kind of arrangement like once or twice before I realized like it has so many downsides. One, like, you have to kind of be in your super peppy, upbeat, like totally professional mode, like 24/7 when you are staying with a couple, which it's not like I'm a vulgar, super unprofessional, horrible person outside of like the way that I normally am around clients, but it just, you exude a lot of energy. It's almost like, instead of being able to give your all to a couple for like 12 hours, it's, you know, it's really different, like spending that amount of time with a couple. And so I have done it occasionally, but like standard of just like having that separation, being able to like rest and recharge and charge batteries and like make sure everything is really set and like I'm fully like energetically, mentally, and emotionally prepared to like give my couple their all on their day and like just give it my all, and then I can go back and I can rest, relax, and recharge. And I also am an introvert, so that also might be why, one of the reasons like I'm not a big fan of like blurring lines with that. And so it's made it really simple since I started rolling it into travel, because they're not looking at like, here's your travel quote, and they're not looking at line items being like, well, what can we check off? Oh, we have an extra room. They don't need to pay for a hotel. It's like, I don't get into those conversations. I don't get into that situation anymore when it's all just rolled in. They don't know what I'm paying for, like how much of that price I've budgeted for travel. Like, it's Amazon Prime. You don't know how much you're paying for shipping. Yeah, so pros and cons of like lumping travel in. Like, there's a lot of lifestyle design things to think about. If you lump your travel in, it is way easier and way more likely that you'll get hired for more destination stuff, for more stuff outside of your own area, because people won't be looking at your pricing and saying, oh, well, if we heard someone local, it would be like this much less, and they can't like define that, what that this much is, and they see like everything you're providing is one all-inclusive like experience that you are providing, that they can't necessarily like chop into little pieces. and be like, yeah, we shouldn't be paying for this person's flights. That seems ridiculous. Whereas like, yes, the couple is paying for my flights, but it's like, no, they're looking at the price tag and seeing the whole experience that I'm providing to them. And the main difference really being the amount of documentation their day is getting, not like the price difference, which is another reason why like having, I'm going to share my screen again really quick, why having separate pricing guides for destination stuff, like my US pricing. So if a couple was inquiring about a US destination, these 4 prices would be different. And if they were inquiring about Colorado, these 4 prices would be different. But it's like, my travel is covered in Colorado as well. It would be lumped in. So it would say like anywhere you want to elope in Colorado, it is covered here. If this was my Colorado pricing versus this is saying anywhere in the world. And so it's like, conceptually, it's not something someone can like break down and like cross different line items off of. And so that's helped a huge amount. But I'd say if you don't want to travel, if you want to do more local stuff and like make it less likely that someone will hire you for out-of-state stuff, which like that's a completely valid lifestyle design choice. Like travel is exhausting. It is really, really tiring, and it's not something that everyone wants to do, or that they think they might want to do and then realize that it's not sustainable for them and it's way more tiring than you realize, which is how I felt getting into doing traveling, that it is way more tiring than you realize. I still love it. I still like I'm not over it yet. And so for me, rolling in travel means I get to be hired to travel more. Whereas if I had it as a big, expensive, separate line item, like people who wanted to pay for it would, and I would feel like, cool, I got paid like a couple extra grand to go travel, awesome. But it would be a deterrent. So like that can be a pro or con depending on your lifestyle design. So say if you want to travel more, include it. If you don't include it. Psychologically, that will probably work out. As far as lumping it in, a lot of people have asked me how I determine like an average cost, because yes, for me, for this specifically for that destination pricing I just showed you, like travel to Patagonia, like where I'm going next week, significantly more expensive than me going to Iceland or going to Mexico, which are also, or Canada. Those are also like other countries' destination that would be lumped into that destination pricing. And so again, I think this goes kind of back to that like marketing myopia, that pricing myopia of looking at what is it costing me, and like should that determine how much I charge. And again, it's important to cover costs, but in reality, like a photographer getting to another country from a client's perspective is the same value no matter what that country is. And in a sense, like I didn't want to deter people from going to cooler, farther away spots might be more expensive to travel to by charging a lot more for travel with it. So essentially, like having pricing rolled in means like, oh, I see you're considering Iceland, but have you thought of Patagonia? It's the same price. Like, why wouldn't you consider it if you haven't booked your flights there yet? And so like that's another psychological thing that is working in my favor, and what I think to be my favor because of my lifestyle design choices and my goals personally, which is to go to farther and farther away, more remote, crazy places. Like that's what I want to do. And so like my pricing is working for me in that sense versus working against me. And so what do? I look over like my whole year, like how many outside the US destination elopements I think I'm going to shoot. Like look at what are the most popular destinations that I shoot or that I want to shoot, go through, like average out really healthy, really, not like bare bones, but like really good, realistic pricing costs for each of those trips, add them all up, divide them by the number of destination weddings, and that's the amount that I would add to my normal rate to make sure that I have them fully budgeted for. So it's around like, let me make sure I have this number correct, I just changed it. I have another monitor over here, guys, hold on. Yeah, so destination stuff is, 1 second. Yeah, so destination stuff is 15. Is it 15? It's $2,000 more than local pricing. So I've budgeted $2,000 for anywhere outside of the U.S. For travel rates, which, like, yeah, I'll technically be making a little bit of money on some of them if I want to choose Mexico, and technically, like, I'll be paying more for elopements elsewhere. But over the whole year, looking at like the service I'm providing and my like revenue and expenses from a yearly standpoint versus a case by case basis, I'm able to lump them in, and it all evens out. So let's see here. The last question kind of related to travel pricing that I had a lot of people ask was, okay, so you have a first couple, let's say, like pay your full destination rate to take you to Norway for their elopement, and then you add it to your travel schedule, and you have additional couples who say, I want to, say, oh, I see you're going to Norway. Like, do you do any kind of special rate since you're already there? Like, can I elope there too? And so the way that we have it structured is, yes, like if a couple is hiring us to go to a location that is outside of what we're currently planning, outside of like current bookings. So like this just happened, like I just had a booking in August for Norway. I didn't have a trip planned out there. And so now that trip is set and this couple has booked me for it, like they changed my schedule and where I would be traveling this year based on where they chose to elope. And so yes, they paid that full destination rate to get me there. And then I've had another couple contact me and say, hey, like I see you're in Norway. We hadn't really considered it before, but when we saw it pop on your travel schedule, like what if we fit our elopement around your schedule and decided to elope there in Norway while you're there? So from that perspective, like the value that these two couples are getting is actually very different. This couple is having me plan my schedule and my travel around them, and like reserving me and dictating like where I'm going to be a year and a half out. And this couple is tagging along. They are like fitting around my schedule, fitting around my other bookings. So yes, there is a price difference for these things. And so because I have rolled in pricing, this couple gets a discount. And I'll say, yeah, because I'm not already traveling out there, like, sure, there's the $500 off. And, and I think it's important not to discount the whole piece of the travel, in the sense like you're still going to charge for like still going to be extra lodging, extra days with a rental car, like other extra transportation things. It's not like a cost neutral situation, especially when this happens a lot for me in Iceland. Iceland is expensive. Like every day you spend there is expensive. And so hopefully that kind of explains it. I've never in years of doing this like had any couple have an issue with that. Like it makes sense. Like they are flying me to a spot that I wasn't currently planning on doing, and that couple literally planned their elopement day around me. And like that, like they should be like, that was a value that like there's a difference in value there essentially. So okay, wow, there's like a lot of questions. Let me jump on these and see what we have. That was what I had. That was what I planned. Wow, I did it in an hour and a half. I'm so happy. They're getting closer to an hour. And again, like I know pricing is a massive, massive topic, so I'm not going to be able to like cover literally everything related to it, but I wanted to tackle those big things around elopements versus weddings and travel stuff. So let's see. Yeah. So Kyria, hopefully that explained where I stay. I like to like stay in my own place. I have camped before, but usually I feel like I get a better night's sleep if I can stay in a hotel before a hiking elopement, if there's one close enough to the trail. And if there's not, sure, camp. Let's see. Kate, I think that's Kate or Caitlin, it's like cut off, sorry. Do Tori and Amber have their own pricing pages even though they're the same prices? Yes, they do. So we have, I don't know, like 12 or 16 different pricing guides total between us, because every photographer has one for every location. So it's like completely tailored to that person. Okay. Cool. I'm just reading over comments here. Do you use a travel planner? Do you do your own? Or they get discounts on flights and hotels and bundles? Kyria, I, having traveled a lot over the past 10 years, having been to 30 different countries, I've kind of, so me and also my husband, which still feels weird to say husband because we just got married. I'm still getting used to that word. He is from Scotland. He's been to nearly 70 countries. Him and I are both just like super avid travelers, and we are really into travel hacking. If you have no idea what that is, just go check out like Million Mile Secrets or thepointsguy.com or Scott's Cheap Flights. Like look at some of that stuff. That's like just the tip of the iceberg of like this whole topic of travel hacking. And I've been wanting actually for a while to put out a travel hacking guide for photographers because like additionally to like really it might seem like a lot to try to travel anywhere in the world for $2,000, but I almost always spend significantly less than that due to the fact that I'm travel hacking all the time and finding cheap or free or nearly free flights all over the world based on how I arrange stuff. So I feel like we do a better job than I would ever find with a travel agent. So no, I set up my own travel. How do you deal with work visas and permits in your destination? Would you consider that rolled into your destination pricing? Yes, that is rolled in for sure. And that is a really big topic, which I cannot get into in this live. I'm not avoiding it. It is so dependent country to country. We've had many in-depth conversations with our lawyer about it because it's legal. It's not something, and it's just totally depend on every person and your citizenship. And it's different with me being married to a European. And it also depends on like what country your clients are from and like how your contract is written. There's like a huge amount of different things that roll into what that situation looks like. And it's such a case-by-case basis that I can't get into that right now. But yes, in that case, like if it was on me, like I always check work permits and visas and all these kind of things like before I get into that kind of situation. That would be rolled into my pricing for sure. That shouldn't be something extra a client is paying. That should be something they should absolutely know up front before hiring me. And so like, yeah, I've definitely told couples ahead of time, like, yeah, like just, you know, like it's like, it's illegal for me to photograph an elopement in your country. Like I can't do it, just so you know. So I feel like that's an ethical thing to tell people ahead of time for sure. What if a couple message you with their exact budget from the start? Do you still direct them to your prices that start off higher? Absolutely. Yes, Kate, for sure. I also I talked about this in my Don't Get Ghosted video, but I don't ask for budget in my contact form for a lot of reasons. Like literally physically writing down a number psychologically makes you want to stick to that number more than if like it's more of this nebulous thought in your head. So I specifically do not ask for budget on the contact form. I don't want to know. It's not going to affect the way that I communicate my value to a couple. And especially if their budget is less than my lowest price, I especially want to be communicating my highest prices first. So cool. Yeah. Any other questions about pricing before I jump off? This has been super good. I think I covered everything that I wanted to. I was better at my like scope creep this time, I think, guys. So any other questions about different, you know, pricing elopements or pricing weddings or rolling in travel, how to charge for travel, anything like that? I think overall what I'm just so wanting to drill in here is that elopements matter. They are someone's wedding day, and I believe that they should be treated as such, including how they are priced and like the value that's being offered to them and what is being offered to them. I don't think elopement should be treated then or thought of then or valued in any way as less than a big wedding, because to me, they are the most beautiful, intentional, emotional, just like incredible wedding days that I've ever been a part of. And there's like, that's my like fire here, is to like really make that more of the standard. Like nothing breaks my heart more than having a couple say like, yeah, like you're the first photographer who we feel like thinks that our wedding day matters. That is as important with us. Like we've been offered like these couple-hour photo shoots, and that's like not what we wanted. You're the first person to show us and tell us like we could do something different, and like it offered us even more than we had dreamed for ourselves for our elopement day. Like that's extremely powerful. And I believe that that is really integral to like me being able to support myself and sustain myself off of only shooting elopements and not shooting, you know, personally, me, hundreds of them a year. We have 3 photographers now, so we're all going to be shooting around 30 to 50 this year, which is for us like a great reasonable workload considering we have a full-time business manager and outsource so many things. So yeah, Oh, permits in national parks. Do client handle that? So if it is a wedding permit, yes. So if it isn't how do you handle permits in national parks? Yes. So if it is a permit specifically for them having a wedding, having an event there, that is something that they cover. If it is a permit specifically for me being able to photograph there, that is on me, the photographer. And so those are things that I look into and communicate about before. But yeah, again, like a lot of those are really kind of yearly costs, because a lot of times, like specifically photography permits are things that are covered over the year. I'd say the only exception would be is if there are a handful of locations that have astronomical one-time photographer fees, and in that case, I would like communicate that to a couple before they chose that location and say, hey, like there's a huge fee here that like literally I couldn't use for any other couple, so this would be an extra charge. But in general, though, I really, really try to avoid that. Like there's been a huge benefit to me, and I know a lot of couples that I've worked with have really appreciated the fact that my pricing is really straightforward, that I don't nickel and dime people to death. And again, a lot of this is like, oh, well, what if you end up having to pay for an extra $300 permit? I don't really believe that you should be operating on margins that are that small that like that would sink you that month. And if you are, like, you're probably not charging enough for your cost of doing business in the first place. And so that is, yeah, all the questions I see so far. But feel free to ask more in the group when I post this video. I really, really, really appreciate all the people that are here. There was like 25, 30 people here pretty much at all times, and it helps me so much to not feel like I'm talking to a computer screen. And I just want to say I really appreciate you guys so much, and this is really, really fun, and thank you for being here and listening to me blabble on about pricing. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you in the group. We'll hang out. So good. Oh, you guys are so sweet. Thanks, Corey. Thank you so much. All right. Have an awesome weekend. Bye. Bye, guys. See you later.